Let's get started. Hi, welcome to Game Changers. And for those of you who are new, I don't think there are many of you who are new, but anyway, Game Changers is a fireside chat featuring exceptional women in the gaming industry. And if you want to find out more about us or watch past episodes, go to our website. It is globalgamechangers.co.uk, and I am the chat moderator, so I am putting it down here. So housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded, and after this, the video will be shared on our website, but anything that you put in the chat will not make it on the recording. So feel free to chat about whatever, and don't worry about people reading it. The default chat settings are set to moderators only. So I actually typed the name, the website link to only hosts and panelists. So my bad. But just as a key learning to everybody, if you want everyone to see your chat, like remember to switch the addressees to everyone instead of just panelists like me. Also, please use the Q&A feature because I'm not really good at multitasking, so I might not see what you put in the chat. But if you use the Q&A feature, we'll get to all the questions at the end of the episode. And finally, we do not have a poll this time around, and a lot of the topics today are more open-ended. So if you have anything in your head that you want to hear more of, just let us know on the chat. Oh, thanks, Rachel. On the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll get to it. So we are very delighted today to have Liz as art director at Gameloft and Rika as lead level designer at Starbreeze. And the topic today is working on big franchise games and what that's like. So maybe we can get started with Liz. Can you tell us a bit about your journey? How did you get into the industry? What games you have worked on?
Yeah, sure. So nice to meet everyone here. It's exciting to be here. So I'm Liz. I've worked in games for the last 17 years. At the moment, I'm art director at Gameloft Brisbane. So our latest game is the Oregon Trail for Apple Arcade. Previous to Gameloft, I worked at Sega Studios Australia. We worked on the London 2012 Olympics game. And one of my favorite projects, Mickey Mouse's Castle of Illusion. And previous to that, I worked at Chrome Studios on Ty the Tasmanian Tiger franchise and Spyro, and yeah, lots of other games there. It's a bit
Nice.
So cool. So I started from 2015. And back in Singapore, I started my career with Ubisoft Singapore and has been involved in Assassin's Creed franchise for quite a bit, starting from Syndicate. And then I moved on to Origin, Odyssey, and eventually Valhalla as well. So my last project over there is Siege of Paris, the DLC, the second DLC of Valhalla. So, and then late August last year, I joined Starbreeze and has been in Stockholm until now, working on the Payday franchise. So nice to meet everyone, and thanks for having me here.
Stockholm is the country with no summer.
Yes.
I loved it there. No, thanks for introducing yourselves. And maybe what we can do is we can start with what is it about? What do you love most about working on big franchises? And maybe since most of our audience are not from AAA, what do you think are the biggest differences between like AAA and smaller studios? Rika, maybe we can start with you because you've gone from Ubisoft to Starbreeze.
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to working on Assassin's Creed franchise in general, what I like about it is, you get to create more, there's like a larger content creation and the scope itself. So and because of that, you get to create more things in a sense. And I guess as a lead as well, I get to lead and manage a level designer in the local studio, and also sort of across like different studios as well when we are doing collaboration, because there are many studios working on the game at the same time. And I am specifically sort of in charge for the Philippine and the Chengdu studio as well. So we work very closely together. So it's not just about, you know, managing the local side of things, but also have to communicate and trying to see what other studios doing and ensuring like there's a smooth process in between as well. And I guess when it comes to level design work per se, there's a ownership on a larger scale, because when it comes to this sort of open world games in general, instead of just one location and one location that you deal with, we deal with like a huge region basically. So you could have like a group of people taking charge in one single big region and work through all the different location or the thematic and whatsoever that is inside. So yeah. And I guess like you are also able to kind of like focus a little bit more on your job expertise in a sense, because usually what I find how it is different from Starbreeze and Ubisoft is that you tend to be more focused on the job experience as the expertise that you're hired for. But for my case right now, it's more of like I am sort of required to wear a few extra hats at sometimes, tackling some maybe production related things, timeline and all sorts of things to ensure like the team has the tools and materials that they need to work with. And the scope is generally much smaller, but more delicate, I would say. And yeah, I think like the team is also a bit more close-knitted, like in medium to smaller studios. So yeah.
So it's kind of the difference between like specialization in like one specific area.
Yes.
And managing different hats and like, but kind of being in a community where everyone's just trying to get things done, like, you know, doing whatever it takes. What about you, Liz? Like, what do you love working? What do you love most working in, like, so big franchises and like big teams?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to be a little bit cheesy here, but in a good way. I guess it's always the people that make game studios, right? And it's like just the talented, like-minded groups that you get to work with every day. It's funny, when I did my intro, and as you were talking, I was like, I also worked at Five Lives, which is an indie developer that did Satellite Rain. So that studio was sort of spawned out of the closure of Sega. So the team of 5 got together and started working on a project there. But it's funny, it's like my indie experience, because they had like a fairly, like quite a good budget to be making that game. The production value of it was still really high. So it was, yeah, it was an interesting experience in that, like, I don't feel like they like suffered in terms of like scope or anything like that. It kind of felt like that equal, you know, AAA experience. So I think, you know, hats off to them for being able to achieve that on a small team. But
yeah,
yeah,
that's true. I mean, I think that's a good point, because you know, you can make something incredible with a small team, and you can make something incredible with a big team. I don't think that's necessarily a constraint. It's just different challenges.
yeah. As Rika was saying, I think it's like, it really is down to like the team and like how well the team work together.
Exactly.
The synergy between, like, you know, the different people.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. What are some advice that you would give to people who are maybe considering joining a AAA studio? Is it for everyone? I know, Rika, you were mentioning there's something about specialization, specializing on a single craft. Is it for everyone in every stage of their career? And what are some things that they should expect, like the pros and cons of working in a large company? Liz, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah. I guess like you were saying, definitely like you'll tend to specialize more in larger studios. So it might be that you focus on, you know, making amazing critters for a game, that sort of thing, which is super fun. It's interesting though, it's like we've been scaling up our studio at the moment. And we're going to get to the point where we have 3 teams. I still feel like I'm wearing lots of hats right now as we're doing that too. So, yeah. But I think in terms of like advice, I would just recommend, or if you are joining a AAA studio, it's like, you know, make sure you've got a good little support network. You know, you've got a mentor or, you know, a good senior that you're looking up to for advice.
How do you go about finding a mentor, or how do you usually like what criteria do you do, and how do you reach out, and like how do you find your first mentor?
Yeah, I guess it's like, you know, a little bit of stalking, finding that person that you've got those like-minded values with, that, you know, you're aspiring to be like, and then, you know, being brave enough to connect with them and have those chats. And yeah.
Rika, what about?
I think when it comes to mentorship, I remember that like when in the earliest days when I first started out in Ubisoft, I usually have this buddy system whereby you get to buddy with someone that is like relatively experienced in the role itself, and then you kind of like pester the shit out of him in a way to like, you know, get all the experience or the understanding or the knowledge and things like that. So I thought that like for a start that could be quite an interesting take to, you know, like start it out. And I guess along the way it's more of like finding mentors, probably not within your job family, someone that could offer you a different form of insight into the industry itself that can help you out in certain ways. So there was like this one period of time where we have this leadership and mentorship kind of like workshop, and also is kind of like a thing that goes across a year or two, whereby you can find a mentor and, you know, engage within the studio itself. So I actually choose like this HR director as like one of my mentor as well, because it's a totally different role, and like she shared with me a lot of like, you know, when it comes to managing people and how do you work with people in general in such a different company, because she used to work in with Singapore Airline, for example. Yeah, so there is like all these differences, and I think like, you know, the different culture, the knowledge that you share across like from your work experience can help you like progress in a very different way, see things in a very different perspective. So
Got it. So I guess don't be too closed about who a mentor, what a mentor can offer. It doesn't have to be so directly related to you, but you know, they could have skills that are very useful or perspectives that are very useful. That's really interesting.
Yep.
There has been a lot of news about like environments, like working on big games, about work environments like crunch, and like, could you give some advice on, firstly, have you been in these situations, and how would you advise to handle these situations when you're under kind of like workplace stress? Yeah, maybe we can start with Liz.
Yeah, I think we've all crunched, unfortunately. It was, you know, when we started in this industry, it was quite a different place, and it was just the norm. But you know, now like you can see a real movement and shift in the industry to avoid it at all costs. But I think it really starts with communication, like communication with you and your manager or your team, and looking out for one another and just being really mindful of, when it's starting to look too big, it's like just raise those flags early, and then we can try and downscope or shift to plan B.
Do you think most of the flags are raised early enough, or is that the one of the main problems that people somehow feel bad raising flags?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is that culture of we have worked overtime in the past, and especially with our juniors, I think there's like a bit of a they're trying to prove themselves.
Yes.
And I'm always looking out for them the most, where you see them or you hear them working late, and it's like, don't do that. Like, that's it's really weird, but it's like, just trying to make sure that that they're okay.
That's super relatable because I'm like, hey guys, stop working late.
And that comes from passion as well, right?
Yes,
and, it's like you want to learn new tools and learn your craft and get better and better, but eventually you'll just be super burnt out and tired. And
yes, I think like you can see they are very passionate and very eager to prove themselves for most part of the time when they first started out in this industry. And like in a way, you always try to tell them that and advise them that, oh, this is not a sprint but a marathon sort of things, and this is not going to be the last game they're going to ever work on. So there's a lot of chances and opportunity to actually work it out in some ways. And I guess like one thing when it comes to crunch in general is that it's always the reason of like overscoping and also lacking of manpower. So I think like when it comes to cases like this, it's always good to work closely with the productions and the leads itself to align on the scope. And I guess it's also understanding the expectation behind the task, behind like why are we doing this, what are we trying to achieve. And I guess it's like for individual themselves, it would be good to be upfront and be, be straightforward about what you could potentially achieve and deliver, and also like what Lee say, raise up red flags issues early, in case that if like you are unable to. So in a way that there will be time to kind of like find a backup plan, or like, oh, do we need to go into this rescoping exercise if it comes down to it. And we actually back then when we are working on some of our content, we actually force ourselves to go through this kind of exercise, just so that we don't kill ourselves just by pushing for more content, because quality over quantity in a sense.
Yes, I mean,
it's really hard as artists. I feel like we're the worst at this, because it's like more, let's make it awesome, and then we're like, oh, we're dying.
I know.
Okay. What I'm hearing also, I guess what I'm hearing is that raising a flag early is not really a weakness or anything to feel bad about. It's a sign of maturity.
Yeah, and you are being responsible about your own work in a way.
Yes. It's you taking responsibility for kind of yourself and also for your team. So they don't also have to, the last minute.
Yes.
I really like what you said about the quality there as well. Like it's so true. It's just always trying to keep that benchmark high.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't need 10 things to represent one super great thing.
What are your thoughts about kind of representation in AAA? What is it like in kind of in the industry around women and gender minority representation? Is it getting better, or is it already good?
I think that is generally getting better. but I think there is still a lot of work to be done on a larger scale. Like I do also kind of like appreciate and like the fact that women in the industry are getting a little bit more recognized for like their work and expertise itself. It's not, you know, like which is like in as compared to back in the past, there hasn't been much spotlight in general at all. And also like in the recent years, there have been communities and groups around the world that has been sort of created for having like gathering this women in the industry, discussing about relatable topics about, you know, working in the industry, the struggle that they may have like encounter, or you know, through the work itself, or like progression in their career. And I guess it's kind of like a support group in a sense of like one another during the course of like their progression into this industry itself. So I think like with that, in a way, we are kind of like moving in a good direction at a steady pace. Yeah.
Liz, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're certainly growing in the right direction. Like I remember when I started in games, there's very few other women. Like, you know, often it would be like maybe one other in a room with you, right?
Yes.
so uncommon. But you know, like on my art team at Gameloft Brisbane, we've now hit parity with yeah, we're at 50% male female, which is incredible. But you know, that's not everywhere, and I think as an industry that number is slowly rising. But you know, I think it's when you start to look at our players as well, like we've got like the stats are starting to show where it's that parity with who's playing games too. So
Yeah.
it's like just trying to get that on the other side, so we get that you know, those ideas from different perspectives across into our teams too.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
I actually have a question about, sorry, I'm jumping a bit, but I have a question about managing teams. And because I know that both of you work on franchises that can take, or games that can take quite a long time to develop, and I'm always curious, like, how do you keep morale up and motivation up for like the entire cycle? Because it could take years, it could take 4 or 5 more.
Puppies, I think. Cat pictures.
How do you, it's like a real marathon, man. How do you how do you
Have more cats in the office. Problem solved.
Cats in the office? Puppies every Friday.
Yes.
We've got, so in, like, joking aside, we've got my my puppy, Mr. Hendricks. He's a sausage. He's a studio dog, so he comes in to the studio with me every day, and I think he does keep morale pretty high until he like steals someone's lunch, and then
No.
And then we all plummet for the day. Oh.
I guess like pets aside, I think like we run in sprints, so we'll do fortnightly sprints, and you know, doing things like, you know, kick off together as a team, and then having that showcase at the end to sort of celebrate the work and where it's at. You know, I think that's probably one of the biggest morale boosters, is just, you know, getting to see that you're making progress, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Connecting and sharing.
Sorry, maybe this is a silly question, but what is the cadence where you know, you take a step back and you see how much progress has been done since the last, I don't know, milestone? Like, how often do you kind of showcase or what the team has worked on so far? Or how do you know when it's time to show progress?
Yeah, so I guess like we'll do showcase every fortnight.
Okay.
So in that, every fortnight, the team will create folders and
Oh,
save off a snippet of where you're at, and then they'll present to the group, and it's really fun. Another one that I do is, it's called Art Daily. So we've just got a folder, and then, you know, it's not quite every day, but we'll, you know, pop shots of the game on where it's at, and then it's awesome to be able to go all the way back to the start when you're
oh
like,
yeah.
it's like, this is amazing, it looks so good, and like, then you look at it in a year's time and it's like, oh, it didn't look so good. We're excited.
Oh.
Very cool to be able to see that.
Okay, and Rika, what about, do you have any strategies?
I guess what Liz mentioned, you know, showcasing and being recognized of like your work and your effort during like throughout the different milestone. For us, we do it in milestone, but then we do have like smaller groups whereby you come together weekly just to sort of like share, oh, what have you been doing, and getting feedbacks and comments. Because I think like generally, you know, when people comes into this industry, they are very passionate about making a great game in general. And I think like from the production and the leads perspective is to actually set goals during this period. I find that is very important because, you know, you have like this different goalposts in the production to look forward to and to achieve. And this sort of like, you know, kind of like put them like into like this different checkpoint during that process, especially when you mention like, oh, if it's going to be like 3 to 4 years kind of production period, that's a long time, and you really need to keep them to, you know, to show them that they have progress like in each stage and things like that. And I think one extra things when it comes to individual themselves is more of like managing expectation too, because it's a very long journey of like creating the game from nothing to something. And I think like we should also help them to pace out like their progress as well, so that they don't get burned out, they don't like feel that they have to, you know, keep always like rushing to get the things delivered and done in a sense. And what else? Yeah, I guess it's also providing feedbacks, getting into retrospective as well, like after each of the milestones, so that, you know, you're not just recognizing the good stuff, but also looking at what could be improved. So in a way that there's like this constant loop that they are working towards too, and it is something that they actually want to work with in a sense. So I think like once you get them engaged in that kind of like mentality of, you know, there's progression, there's things to look forward to, they are generally more motivated to move forward and, you know, be a lot more involved, instead of you just leaving them like at the side and assume that they will deliver their work. So yeah.
I see. So it's like a game, right? You should
Yes.
you have constant feedback loop.
Yeah.
Pace.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, like, you know, the parties and the celebration that comes around with it, I think like that helps like every once in a while to show them that, oh, you know, you're rewarded, you know, like after you play a game, like you do something big and then you get rewarded with like, you know, some stuff. So I think generally if you put it back into real life, that's kind of work it that way.
Yes. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask, maybe the next topic we can talk about stewardship in AAA or in larger franchises. Some of the games that you work on, they are quite mainstream. They have a large audience, and they help form how many people view minorities and gender minorities and racial minorities. Could you give some examples of how do you help portray an accurate representation in your games? And maybe Liz, you work in Oregon Trail, which is such a classic. can you share something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oregon Trail's a nostalgic classic, like it was in all the schools in the States. But like something that was missing from the game originally was the Black and Native American representation. It was very much told from one side. So when the opportunity came up to remake it on Apple Arcade, we knew like from the get-go we wanted to be more inclusive with our characters. So at that point we actually got Native American and Black scholars on board, because obviously I'm Australian, my team's Australian, so telling stories from the other side of the world, we wanted to make sure that our facts were correct, and lots and lots of research went into it, and then they would be fact-checking with us. And yeah,
so throughout the whole process, like all the way from like the start, pre-production, you'll get scholars involved?
A little bit later.
Okay.
So we had a fairly good pre-production period that was a little bit longer than normal. So that involved us like searching the internet, which is a terrible idea. Don't do it. It's wrong. Go to the library. Get the
key learning of the day.
Yeah.
I agree.
But yeah, so we went to our state library here and borrowed books, and yeah, just huge textbooks that we would read, and there were like travelers' diaries from the time as well.
Wow.
Really
Cool.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, like just trying to immerse yourself with so much of that era. And then once we had done our research, we would then get it, we'd work with our scholars to make sure it was correct. And like there's still times where it was just a little bit stereotyped, and you know, we thought we had it right, but it was still just not quite right. So.
You kind of do your best with the resources, but I feel like if your process is responsible and respectful, it's you know, at the end of the day, that's the audience should understand that the process has been done respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rika, what about you? You've worked on quite a few big titles. Do you think perspectives of different genders and races is generally getting better, or?
Yeah, actually, what Liz talked about remind me of when I was working on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So I'm in charge of this region called Finland, which is you know the old it's basically America, but you know, in that time. And I think like there's a lot of like Native American in general when it comes into consideration. So the idea was that to portray them in the most respectful and more authentic way as much as possible. And I think that because back in AC3, we do have a Native American consultant that works very closely with us on that game itself. So we did manage to sort of get him back into for a bit during that time when we are doing Finland itself. And we have gathered quite a lot of like informations and all the different knowledge that he would to share. And of course, we did our own research too when it comes to, you know, how they live, what is their culture, how do they used to live during that time period, what is their lifestyle and things like that. And we do our best to try to portray it within the region itself, because I am a very big fan when it comes to crowd life realization. When how do you deal with the people living in the world, what's their routine like, what are their what do they do like during the day, during the night, and so on and so forth. So I kind of like, you know, push in that direction, and like the where do they live, how their living condition is like, and so on and so forth. So I try to like, push as much as possible. And during those time, we also have our in-house historian too. So that helps quite a little bit when, when you are gathering all this information. So we do use the internet to do it, but we did go through like the historian and the consultant just so that, we are looking at the right things. And not, like just from like some random wiki page and okay, let's call it a day. So
Wikipedia is always wrong. Not use Wikipedia.
Sites like Smithsonian are amazing. Like there's a really nice full circle moment when our game ended up on Smithsonian as well.
No.
So they reported on it, and it's like,
oh,
that's amazing. Oh, that's amazing.
yeah. So
yeah.
And kind of moving away from kind of perspectives of kind of minorities in the game, how do you have any useful methodologies to kind of understand who exactly plays your game, like who exactly your audience is? And or what are those methodologies? Maybe we can start with Liz.
Yeah. So I guess using Oregon Trail as an example, again, it had such a big fan community. So first and foremost, we went through the internet in a good way and read all of the comments on like Reddit posts and things like that. That was really awesome. We found this one like cosplay group that likes to get together in Oregon each year and reenact the trail.
That's nice.
Oh, that's amazing.
So cute.
But we would, so we started to gather sort of a lot of fan information really, really early on in the project. And then of course, playing the original game and thinking about what those moments are and what they were in history as well. And
amazing. Rika, do you have any methodologies, tactics? Who are your audience? How do you?
I guess it's more like the first and foremost is basically identifying your target audience for the game that you're creating. So I think like for Assassin's Creed itself, it has, a specific set of audience as well as Payday in general. So I think like once you're able to identify your target audience, it's easier to sort of understand that some of the stuff that they might be very interested in, or like maybe some of the stuff they will be a bit turned off. And like once you kind of figure that out, it's easier to sort of like cater the needs to this particular set of audience. And you're designing and producing contents with that in mind as well. So, and yeah, go for it.
This is me. I'm always jumping in. But interrupt me if I interrupt you. But actually, on that point, how much do you include your community in, like, I don't know, testing,
like
post-launch?
Yeah, so as far as I know, like back then when I was working on Assassin's Creed, we do have external playtests. It could be like, in the local site, or it could be in another studio. So I mean, the game is practically accessible through different studio at that point of time. So they often do external playtests, and they start relatively early as well, because if you don't start early and you will only get the feedback at the very latest stage, and it's too late to change anything. So you usually try to do it as fast as possible, just so to get a good insight. And we usually pick up, like, for example, players that have played the previous Assassin's Creed games, or like they are relatively new. So you have these two different set of audience, and you can see like the feedbacks, the comments that they given is very different, and how do you balance it out at the end of the day. And then when it comes to Payday, we are kind of like on a DLC basis. So we release for Payday 2, it's a live game already for over like 8 years or so. And then we are doing like this DLC basis, whereby every few weeks or so, or months, we release a DLC. And then usually for the heist itself, for the content they pay and play on, we usually have like a week or so before like the actual release. We have released the game to some of the partners we work really closely with to have them play and review and maybe raise up some critical issues that they may find, just so that we have like this heads up of, you know, what we need to look at the actual release, and, you know, the first week patch and things like that. So I thought that was like really interesting that you get to engage your community every time like you release something to get the first-hand information.
Yes, and quite frequently.
Yes.
Liz, what yourself? How do you? Could you share more about how you involve community in every kind of different stages?
Yeah, I guess our process is very similar. So we'll do at least 3 playtests over the duration of the project, and you know, it's connected in with the target audience as well. So on the project I'm doing at the moment is targeted for little girls. So you know, that's that's very different to our dev team. So yeah,
how do you organize that play test? How do you collect feedback?
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
Because Gameloft's a French company, they actually do the playtest sessions in Paris. So they'll record them and then send us videos of how the sessions went, and you know, write reports. And yeah, it's super cute to see the feedback coming through.
Oh, that's very cute. And that's very cute. That must be so difficult, figuring out how to phrase questions and how to interpret answers for like different demographics. I don't even.
It'll be a lot of watching and seeing if they're understanding on what's happening in the game, if they're getting blocked at any stage, and then of
like
course,
the body language.
Body language is a big one. Like if you start to see, you know, like the stressful head,
like,
you're like, okay, let's start. But, yeah, it's super helpful to do it the whole way through. And yeah, it can be, you know, any kind of audience. We did another one that was around a battle royale, so you know, quite a bit more of a
different.
But isn't this normal then?
That's how we sit.
Isn't they doing that all day? Oh, but I'm not the target audience. Oh, okay. No, that's so interesting. And kind of, is there new changes, like new features or like changes? Like for example, you're working on a sequel, and you're thinking of doing something that is quite different. How do you manage community expectations and like, I don't know, comments, and like, you know, maybe some old players don't really like changes, or how do you keep them, I don't know, engaged? And yeah, do you have any tips around that? It's kind of a,
I guess like I think like when we are creating sort of like a sequel, I think the general idea is that we still want it to kind of feel somewhat still familiar to the existing player base that we have, to kind of sort of like give them a sense of belonging, and from there we could, you know, start building their expectation of like upon of maybe what new things may come as well, alongside with things that they are already familiar with in general. And I guess the gist of it is try not to overpromise or overhype unless we are really confident that things that we do overall resonate well with the players that we are trying to get attention of. And the thing is that we also at the same time don't really want to make everything too familiar. If not, like imagine they would just be sort of playing the same game in a new installment with just some tweaks. And like with some parts of the game feeling familiar at the same time, we also kind of want to take the opportunity to introduce some new and fresh ideas as well, so that we could constantly improve the franchise as a whole, and not just like that for that specific game. So yeah.
Yeah, it's about trying to stay true to the
Yes,
game.
the roots of like, you know, what makes the game great.
Figure out what the core is and like
Yeah.
what you can push.
And
Yeah.
sometimes like we'll see it come through reviews as well. Like that's sort of another way that you're connecting in with your audience, is like when they're literally rating you on the App Store. You'll see interesting ideas sort of that way. And
Oh wow.
yeah, it's always awesome when someone's like, I really wish this thing was coming, and you're like, that's what we're doing this update.
It's like, yeah. It's coming.
Is that a good kind of way to get ideas? Is that a good strategy to get ideas? Or do most of your new ideas come from the team? Or is it like a mix? Like you know, ideas could come from anywhere.
Yeah, I guess it can come from both sides, but generally the dev team will have a very clear vision for what they would like to see through update content, and you know what they feel the game, you know, what might not have made it into launch, or you know, those little bits that make life better. But like certainly from an audience point of view, you'll hear it through the communities too.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of like, you know, balancing out, okay, what is the great ideas and does it align with the vision, the direction that we are trying to push as well. I think like there has been like a lot of like great ideas in general coming from the community. The thing is that like, how do we fit into our timeline, our scope, and also like the overall package that we are trying to, you know, deliver to our target audience as well. Yeah. And I think like when it comes to a live game such as Payday 2 itself, that is kind of like constantly being updated. I see that as an opportunity whereby there's always room for improvement and shaping up in the game in a way where the content that we produce actually resonate with both the dev team themselves and also the community that we are trying to build. So I thought that that was really interesting.
Yes, and I guess that's kind of, I don't know, like that's what you're kind of trying to reach, right? When both parties have like the same understanding, it's like it means the game resonates similarly.
Yeah, and like for example, our QA team, they has been like, you know, been the one reading up a lot of like community feedback, trying to step in the shoes of our players out there when they are giving like feedbacks and comments about what could be potentially good to be part of the game and things like that. So we do have like the voices of, you know, of the community being part of the project itself at most of part of the time. So that information, and you know, they have been playing the game for the longest time, being part of the QA team, they understand like, oh, what are some of the best content, best features that is included in a sense like as part of the game itself. And I think like those information and knowledge do help people that are like me coming into the studio like very like just a few months to kind of like get a better understanding of like, okay, how do we do this and what are sort of the things to take note and keep in mind pushing forward as we, you know, produce more content. So
Got it. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Ladies, thank you so much. I think that's all the questions I have. And I think I've learned a lot. And I know there are questions that I've had in my head for quite a while. around what is core and what can you push, and like, around perspectives of people, and how do you stay true to those perspectives in a game where, you may not have people in your team that are from that have those perspectives. And that's something I've always been really interested about. I think our audience doesn't usually get the viewpoints of like really like, franchises that have been around and are classics, and how do you stay true while also modernizing it. So thank you so much for everything you shared. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes.
And everyone, so I hope our audience has enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us. As usual, if you have any questions, you know how to reach out to us. You can go to the website and you can ask us questions there, or you can see past episodes or anything. And I hope you've learned as much as I have. Thank you for joining the episode, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much, Liz. Thanks so much, Rika. I hope you enjoy yourselves. And yeah.
It's been
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, it's interesting to learn a lot of new things as well. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.